Do you have everything? Yeah, you had a glass of milk, right? We already had that? Yes, okay. Well, get nice and cozy in bed. I'm gonna go and turn the light off, okay? And you can fall asleep. Oh, you want me to read you a bedtime story? Do your parents read you bedtime stories? Okay. Well, I guess I can read you something. Should I am I supposed to come up with it, or oh, you have a book. Okay, well, here, give me the book. Oh, wow, it's a big book of stories. It says Scary Storybook Collection. Yeah. Oh, it's a bunch of Disney characters. Oh, I love Disney movies. Yeah. Oh, that's very cute. Do you want me to read you? Do you have any specific story you want me to read you, or should I just pick myself? Do you want me to read you all of them? Well, I can't read you all of them. Come on, you need to go to bed. It's already 8:30. It's way past your bedtime. Yes, you're lucky your parents aren't home and I let you stay up. Okay, well, here. We can look through the table of contents and I can read you some stories, okay? Right. So we have, I'll name out the stories and then you tell me which ones you want me to read to you. Okay, so we have Jack Attack. Who's That Ghost? Haunted Halloween. Captain Hook's Shadow. The Scariest One of All. An Icy Adventure. One Brave Gorilla. Boo to You, Winnie the Pooh. Mater and the Ghostlight. The Scary School. Where's Woody? Maleficent's Revenge. The Witch Next Door. The Sea Witch and the Sharks. One Scary Day. The Home Tree Spook. Gorilla's Surprise Visits. And Trapped. Yes, that is all. Which one would you like for me to read? Okay, so you want me to read Haunted Halloween. The Scariest One of All. The Maleficent Revenge. The Witch Next Door. And Cruella's Surprise Visits. Well, I'll be nice and I'll also read to you the Home Tree Spook. Okay, so you want me to start with Haunted Halloween, yes? Alright, I'll turn to... Here we go. Okay, so this is Haunted Halloween. It's like Mickey Mouse. I am going to have a really terrific Halloween party tonight, Mickey Mouse thought. If I ever finish getting ready, he tacked a fake cobweb to the wall and looked around his living room. Jack-o'-lanterns and ghosts stared back at him. Everything looks nice and spooky, he said. I bet Minnie will love it. Mickey glanced at the clock. Golly, he said, it's almost time for the party, and I haven't put my costume together yet. Mickey knew he had an old pirate costume packed away in the attic. He climbed up a creaky ladder and turned on the light. Now where did I put that costume? Mickey wondered. Thunder crashed and lightning flashed across the sky. Then the attic light went out. Oh dear, Mickey cried. It was very dark. He stumbled into a huge cobweb. Ew, he said with a shudder. Mickey tried to find his way over to the ladder. After a couple of minutes, the lights came back on. Thank goodness, Mickey said. He spotted the old trunk he'd been looking for. I'll bet my pirate costume is in here. Mickey took out a key he'd brought with him. He put it in the rusty old lock. It turned easily. As he lifted lifted the lid of the trunk, he felt a tickle in his nose. "Ah-choo!" he sneezed. A cloud of dust surrounded the trunk. It looked kind of spooky. "It's just the dust," Mickey said. He lifted the lid off the trunk, and a skeleton popped out. "Ah!" Mickey shouted. Then he realized it was just a plastic decoration. "Woo," he said, relieved. "This skeleton will be perfect for my party." He rummaged through the trunk. "There's a lot of cool stuff in here. Maybe I'll take the whole trunk downstairs." Meanwhile, in Mickey's backyard, Pluto had been chasing a ball near the clothesline. As Pluto charged after it, one of the sheets hanging from the line came loose and fell on top of him. It covered him from head to tail. Suddenly, rain began to fall. The wet sheets stuck to Pluto like glue. He ran around the yard, trying to get it off, but he couldn't. He wasn't able to see anything. Just then, Donald, Goofy, Minnie, and Daisy drove up to Mickey's house. They were all dressed in their Halloween costumes. "Gosh, look at the lightning," Goofy explained. "It's a spooky Halloween night," Minnie said nervously. "Let's run right into the house," said Daisy. "If we wait for Mickey to answer the door, our costumes will get soaked." "Mickey, we're here," called Minnie when they entered the house. "Where are you?" But Mickey didn't answer. He was still upstairs, and the storm was too loud for him to hear. Boom went the thunder. Then the lights went out again. "Uh-oh," cried Donald. The friends stood in the dark for a moment. Thump-ka-thump thump. It sounded like something, or someone, was being dragged across the floor upstairs. What is that?" Daisy asked with a gasp. "Mickey," Minnie called. There was no answer. In the backyard, poor Pluto was still stuck under the sheet. Since he couldn't see, he wasn't able to find the doggy door. "Arr, arr, arr," Pluto howled. "What's that sound?" Daisy whispered. "Shh, shh," Goofy whispered back. Just then, something weird and white ran past the window. "It's a ghost," cried Daisy. Mickey's friends were too scared to even scream. Up in the attic, Mickey lit a candle and changed into his pirate costume. Then, picking up the skeleton decoration, he slowly and carefully headed down the dark staircase. Mickey's friends heard a slow shuffling of feet and a rattling of bones. They looked up to see the shadow of a horrible monster coming toward them. "Oh no!" Donald screamed as the others hid behind a chair. Then Donald dove onto the chair and hid under a pillow. The friends prepared for the worst. Suddenly, the lights came back on. "Hi, everybody," Mickey said. The scary monster his friend had seen had really been his shadow. Mickey's friends stared at him in shock. "Oh, Mickey, it's just you," cried Minnie. "You really scared us." "We thought you were a ghost," Goofy exclaimed. "That's one scary costume," Donald said with a shiver. Daisy picked up a cupcake and began to munch on it. "Mickey," she said, "this is the scariest, most exciting Halloween ever. How did you do it?" "Gosh, Mickey, it's the best haunted house I've ever been in," added Goofy. Haunted house?" said a puzzled Mickey, looking around. He had done a lot of decorating, but the house wasn't haunted. Just then, Pluto found his way through the doggy door. He happily ran into the living room. Mickey and his friends looked up and saw a ghost, and boy, did they scream. "Arf!" barked Pluto. "Oh, Pluto, it's just you," said Mickey, relieved. "Hey, boy, you're all wet. Let's get you dried off." Mickey turned to his friends and grinned. "You're right. This has been the scariest Halloween ever." And that's the end. That was a spooky story, don't you think? Yeah. Right, so now I read you Haunted Halloween. Are you ready to go to bed yet? No? Okay, I guess I can read you another one. You wanted me to read the scariest one of all. Okay, well that's after this one. Okay, this is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the scariest one of all. One night, a raven flew to the Queen's castle to deliver a message. "Why, it's an invitation to the Duke's annual costume ball," the Queen exclaimed. "I, of course, will win first prize for the scariest costume of all." With an evil smile, she summoned her stepdaughter, Snow White. "Gather the royal tailors," she ordered. "I need the scariest costume in the land." "Yes, your Majesty," said Snow White. Then she walked through the palace and told the tailors about their task. They went to work immediately, trying to come up with scary costumes. "Enough of these drawings," the Queen yelled when she saw what the men were doing. "I want a costume now." The tailors began to cut and sew as quickly as they could. "Try this one, your Majesty," one tailor said. The Queen put her arms into the long sleeves of a shimmering black and silver costume with spindly spider legs. "Wrong, all wrong," the Queen shouted, looking at herself in the mirror. "Show me something else." "Perhaps a black bat?" the tailors asked. "Or maybe an ugly dragon." But nothing pleased the Queen. "Do you want to lose your heads?" she shrieked. "Never mind, I'll do it myself." The Queen sneaked down into her laboratory, where she searched through her books for just the right spell. "Let's try this one," she said. "Take 1/2 pound of mummy dust, stir in black of night, an old hag's cackle, and screaming fright." When the ingredients were mixed, the Queen held up the bubbling potion and, quick as a flash, drank it all. At once she turned into a mean old hag. "That's perfect," she crowed. "Now all I have to do is ask the magic mirror to be sure. Magic mirror on the wall, who is the scariest one of all?" The Queen was shocked by the mirror's answer. "My Queen, your costume is a fright, but the scariest of all will be the fair Snow White." "What?" screamed the Queen. "That can't be." The Queen hurried down the stairs and found the sweet and lovely Snow White scrubbing the castle floors. "Look at her cleaning. The mirror is surely mistaken," exclaimed the evil Queen. "No one will be scarier than I." Snow White thought she heard a noise and began to turn around. But the Queen didn't want Snow White to see her costume, so she ran back up the stairs. The raven cawed. "Oh," said Snow White. "It must have been a bird." She shrugged her shoulders and went back to work. That night, the Queen made her grand entrance at the ball, sure that she'd be the scariest one there. "What a monstrous costume," said a masked duchess. "I'm sure it's the most frightening costume I've ever seen," said the Duke. "The Queen should win first prize." Everyone agreed. The Queen was about to wrap her bony fingers around the golden trophy when the ballroom doors suddenly blew open. A figure appeared, and a shadow fell over the entire room. "Oh my!" cried the Duke. "It's a monster!" The creature moved closer. "The castle is under attack!" cried the Duke. "Rack!" The Queen's raven screeched as everyone ran to hide. But the Queen was not afraid. "It is not a monster, you fools!" she cried. "Only a costume." "A costume," added the Duke, peeking out from under a table. "It's magnificent," someone exclaimed. "I've never seen someone like it." The Duke quickly took the trophy and handed it to the person who'd just come in. "This costume takes the prize," he announced. The other guests cheered. As the creature stopped to thank the crowd, the Queen became furious. There, under the mask, was the gentle face of Snow White. Look, she's in the costume. Using the scraps the Queen's tailors had left behind, Snow White had made her own scary costume. "Horrid girl," the Queen muttered. "I should have locked her in the dungeon." Snow White was the hit of the costume ball. The Queen was enraged, but would not let her anger show. She slipped away unnoticed. The Queen returned to her throne room. She realized that Snow White hadn't known it was her in the old hag costume. "Perhaps I'll give the girl a good scare some day," she said. She bit into an apple and began thinking about her costume for the next year's ball. And that's it. You ready to go to sleep yet? No? How many stories am I going to have to read you before you fall asleep? Alright, well, the next one you wanted, you said, was Maleficent's Revenge, was it not? Yes, Maleficent's Revenge. So I'm going to go find that one. nice pictures. Here we go. Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent's Revenge. When Princess Aurora and Prince Philip had gotten married 2 years earlier, peace and happiness had settled over the entire kingdom. Now it was almost time for their anniversary celebration. "We want everyone in the land to share in our happiness," announced the prince. Their dear friends, the 3 good fairies, Merryweather, Flora, and Fauna, were anxious to help prepare the palace. With a wave of their wands, the fairies started decorating the ballroom with the finest china, gleaming silver, and fresh flowers. This would be a ball to remember. As the fairies prepared for their party, they bickered around the colour of flowers in the centerpieces. "Make them pink," Flora insisted, sapping her wand. "Make them blue," Merryweather said. Fauna sighed. The fairies could never agree on a colour. "Will you two stop squabbling? We have lots of work to do." Merryweather tried to put garlands on the windows, but she couldn't get them to appear. "My wand has stopped working," she exclaimed. "Indeed," Flora said, looking at her own wand. "We have no magic." Darkness fell over the palace, and the 3 fairies huddled together. What could be happening? It was still the middle of the day. Fauna ran to the window. She saw that the sun had ducked behind the moon. "It's a solar eclipse," she called. "During an eclipse, fairies lose their magic. And spells sometimes lose their power," Merryweather whispered with a shudder. "When Aurora was a baby, the evil Maleficent had put a spell on her that made her fall asleep on her 16th birthday. Luckily, Prince Philip had defeated Maleficent and broken the spell on Aurora with a kiss. Everything had turned out well, and Maleficent was gone forever, or so they thought. As the darkness of the eclipse fell over Maleficent's castle, the stone raven perched up on the balcony came to life. "Caw, caw," it cried, and went to search for its mistress. Before long, the birds found Maleficent's black cloak and the sword of truth that had caused her death. A staff with a green glass ball was nearby. The raven knocked his beak against the magic glass. A green vapor was released. A few minutes later, Maleficent appeared. She had come back to life. "Come to me, my pet," she told the bird. "We have much to do." With the raven on her shoulder, Maleficent used her magic to eavesdrop on the kingdom. Everyone was preparing for the anniversary. Maleficent scowled when she heard that Prince Philip and Princess Aurora had gotten married. Now that she was back, Maleficent would break up the royal couple and take over the kingdom. This time, she wouldn't be stopped. The royal ball was the next day. The whole kingdom came to celebrate. "Thank you for sharing this day with us," Prince Philip said, welcoming the crowd. He handed Aurora a gift. "See, look at the ball. They're having such a good time." Suddenly, a green mist crept into the ballroom. Everyone in the palace trembled in fear. "I see you are having another celebration that I wasn't invited to," Maleficent screeched as she made her entrance. She raised her hands high above her head and began to recite a spell. The green mist filled the ballroom and turned everyone into stone. Only Maleficent and the princess were left. Aurora gasped with horror. "The spells the good fairies cast on you when you were a baby cannot protect you from being lonely. You will wither like a wilted rose," Maleficent sneered, and with that she left the palace. Aurora spent the next few hours sobbing. Her beloved prince was turned to stone, and so were her good friends the fairies. This was the worst curse that Maleficent could have cast. Deep in the forest where the princess had played as a child, the woodland creatures heard her cries. They scurried to the palace and tried to comfort their dear friend. After a while, Aurora dried her eyes. "Maybe I'll go to Maleficent and beg her to set the prince and the others free." She rushed out before the animals could stop her. The princess struggled to find her way through the dark forest. Since Maleficent's return, the woods had become overgrown and thorns and brambles snagged Aurora's dress. From her castle, Maleficent watched the princess approaching. She knew that she could not cast a curse on her since she was still protected by the spell that the good fairies bestowed upon her as a baby. Maleficent had to be clever. Finally, Aurora arrived at the forbidden castle. "Please lift your curse on the prince and my people," Aurora begged. "Turn me to stone instead." "Well," Maleficent said, "I cannot place a curse on you, but you could ask me to grant you a wish." Aurora thought of the prince and all the kind people in the kingdom. She knew that if she asked Maleficent to grant her wish, she would never see them again. With the heaviest of hearts, Aurora said, "I wish that you would send me to sleep forever in exchange for freeing everyone else." Maleficent smiled wickedly. She waved her magic staff above the princess, and Aurora fell into a magical slumber. Then Maleficent returned to the royal palace and released the people from the stone spell. As Philip woke up, he immediately looked for his wife. At once he sensed that her disappearance had something to do with Maleficent. Everyone in the kingdom was worried about the evil fairy except Prince Philip. "I will confront Maleficent," he said. "I will go to the Forbidden Mountain alone." The prince made his way to Maleficent's castle. Once inside, he raced downstairs, locking the door behind him. "The last time you battled, you had the Sword of Truth to save you," Maleficent raged. "This time, you have nothing." She turned into a mighty dragon and broke through the door. Prince Philip dove out the way. He struck the beast on the head with a branch. She roared and whipped around to bite him with her poisonous fangs, but she bit her own tail instead. With a loud cry, Maleficent fell over. This time, she was gone forever. The prince raced on to find his princess. Prince Philip found Aurora in a dark room. He knelt by her side and gently touched her cheek, but the princess didn't wake up. Even though Maleficent was dead, her magic still seemed to be working. The heartbroken prince leaned over and kissed Aurora goodbye. "I am sorry that I couldn't save you," he whispered. Aurora's eyes fluttered open. "Philip," she exclaimed, "you did save me. Nothing can defeat the power of true love. Not a curse, a spell, or even a wish." All of Aurora's forest friends came running in. The prince laughed. "It seems I am not the only one who missed you." When the prince and princess returned to the royal palace, everyone rejoiced. The darkness and thorny woods had disappeared, and everything was bright and sunny again. "Oh, I am so happy to be home," Aurora cried. Then Prince Philip cued the orchestra and music filled the room. It was time to celebrate their anniversary. Oh, that one was quite sweet. Okay. You're not asleep yet, aren't you? Damn, I thought you almost were. Well, what do you want me to read then? The Home Tree Spook. Oh, I told you I'd put that one in. Let's see. The Home Tree Spook. This is the fairies. It was harvest moon night in Pixie Hollow, where all the fairies lived. Tinkerbell, Lily, Fawn, and Beck were all telling scary stories outside the home tree. Fawn and Beck were sorry when the spooky tales were over. Those were their favorites. But Fawn decided the spooking didn't have to end. The next morning, she disguised herself as Beck. While Beck was still sleeping, Fawn snuck into her friend's room. She hid behind the dressing table and removed the glass from the mirror. When Beck woke up and sat down at her dressing table, Fawn did everything Beck did. Beck didn't realize she was really staring at Fawn until Fawn reached to the mirror and peeked and tweaked her nose. Beck screeched in shock and then began to giggle. "You scared the pixie dust off of me," she exclaimed. Fawn knew that Beck liked to play a good prank too. She was sure Beck would trick her. A few days passed and nothing happened. Then, late one night in the barn, Fawn was visiting with the dairy mice. She was an animal talent fairy just like Beck, so she could talk with all the animals. She and the mice chatted away. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a huge shadow on the barn wall. It was 3 times the size of her own shadow, and only inches away. Fawn was frightened. What could it be? And how will we ever escape? She thought. Panicked, she whirled around to face the monster. Instead, she saw Beck and Fira, a fire talent fairy, giggling. They had worked together to make the giant shadow. "Now we're even," Beck said. But Fawn wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, Fawn surprised Beck with more pranks. Beck answered each trick with one of her own. Fawn decided to come up with something to prove that she was the best prankster. She fell asleep that night thinking of tricks. The next morning, Fawn was still in bed when Beck burst through the door. "I have no idea how you did it," Beck cried, "and without waking me up." "Huh?" Fawn asked. She didn't know what Beck was talking about until they went to Beck's room. Nearly everything in it had been turned upside down. Fawn giggled. It was a funny prank. "I only wish I had thought of it," she cried. "But Fawn," said Beck, "if you didn't do it, who did?" Fawn finished. They decided another fairy was having some fun. Either that or the home tree was haunted. Ghost or not, someone had played a prank on both Fawn and Beck the next morning. They woke up to find their room splattered with mysterious green goo. Following the trail of slime, the two fairies made their way to the home tree kitchen, only to discover that the goo led right to an open jar of kiwi fruit jam. "Someone really got us," Fawn said, laughing. "We were hot on the trail of jam." Fawn and Beck were determined to catch the mystery prankster. That night they had a sleepover in Fawn's room. They set traps made out of superfine spider webbing tied with tiny bells across the doorway and window. "No one's getting in here without us knowing it," Fawn said as they settled into their beds. The next thing they knew, a noise awakened them. In a rush to follow the sound, Fawn stuck her head out into the hall. Bring, bring. Fawn's head had gotten caught in the trap they'd set, and all the tiny bells were ringing. "Oops," Fawn cried. With Beck's help, Fawn freed herself from the webbing. Then they flew outside, following the eerie wailing sound. Were they on the trail of the home tree ghost? In the end, all they found was Twitter, a hummingbird friend with a bit of a cold. He had been practicing a new song, and because he was sick, it sounded like he was wailing. Laughing at their silliness, Fawn and Beck decided to go back to sleep. When Fawn opened her eyes the next morning, she couldn't believe what she saw. She was lying on a table in the kitchen, a tablecloth covering her like a blanket. Dulcie, the first baking talent fairy in the kitchen each morning, was staring down at her in surprise. "Goodness," Dulcie exclaimed, "why are you sleeping in the kitchen?" I don't know," Fawn replied. Fawn went to Beck's room to tell her what was going on. Beck, wake up," she exclaimed. Beck yawned. "It's so early," she said. Fawn told her what happened. "You mean someone moved you from your bedroom to the kitchen while you were sleeping?" Beck said. Fawn reminded Beck that they had forgotten to reset the trap when they'd returned to bed the night before. "I guess the prankster came in right through the door. If only we had reset the trap, we could have caught the culprit." Fawn and Beck hatched a new plan. That night, after everyone was asleep, they set more traps, a couple in each corridor of the home tree. They were sure that would be enough to catch anyone flying around in the middle of the night. "And this time, I'm not going to sleep," said Fawn. "We should find a good spot out in the corridor, where we can see if anyone's coming. Then we'll hide, we'll watch, and we'll wait." Behind a plant stand in the hall near their rooms, Fawn and Beck sat quietly. The night lights in the hall cast weird shadows. A strong wind outside made the home tree sway and creak. Then a dark shape skittered down the corridor. Fawn gasped, but it was just a beetle passing through. Watching and waiting was spookier than Fawn had expected. Fawn closed her eyes, trying to relax. Her mind wandered back to the night of the last full moon dance, the coloured lanterns and streamers, the tables piled with treats, and the fairies' brightly coloured dresses swirling around and around. Just then, a loud ringing filled the hallway. Bring! A trap had been tripped. Fawn snapped awake. "Who's the prankster?" she cried. Then she looked down. Spider webbing and bells were trapped around her torso and legs. Why, Fawn had tripped the trap. But how? "Fawn," said Beck, "you are the mystery prankster." Fawn couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But wouldn't I know if I were?" "Not if you were sleeping," Beck said. "I just watched you dance in your sleep. You danced right into that trap." Beck demonstrated what she had seen Fawn do, twirling around the hall with her arms stretched out and her eyes closed. "Fawn," she said, "I think you were sleep flying." Fawn was shocked. But the more she thought about it, the more she thought Beck could be right. She remembered having a dream the night Beck's room got turned upside down, a dream in which she was turning things over. As for the jam, well, she really did like kiwi fruit jam. "Maybe I was hungry for a midnight snack," Fawn said. "And maybe you were going back for more the night you wound up on the kitchen table," Beck suggested. Beck crossed her arms. "No fair," she cried. "I'm really going to have to watch out now. You're pranking day and night." Fawn didn't really want to trick other fairies in her sleep, though. From then on, she set traps in her doorway and window before she went to sleep. That way, she'd wake up if she sleep flew out of the room. Of course, that didn't mean that Fawn's pranking during the day had to end, especially since her friend Beck was such a good sport. And that's the end. Oh, they're sleeping now. Well, I'm glad it only took 4 stories to get you to sleep. I thought I would have had to read the whole book. Well, have a good night, my darling. I'll see you tomorrow when your parents arrive.